Okay, Boker Tov, as we are here on this fine Yom Rishon, Sunday morning, and with the blessing and being honored that we could share words of Torah. Sorry for that screen interruption, just forgot to put the phone on silent rather than vibrate, otherwise you would hear constant vibrations as messages come in. Let's begin, as we usually do, with a mitzvah of tzedakah, an amazing and important mitzvah in its own right, and a sure way to bring some siyata d'shmaya, some blessing down from Hashem, so that we have success in our Torah class today. So here's the pushka. Let's put in a coin, and we start off with a mitzvah. Let us also start off, as we always do, with the bracha on the coffee. And I hope you're sitting down with your own cup of coffee so that you could relax and study Torah. We have a lot to share today. I think, the class will be perhaps, also some simple ideas, but also more scholarly. As we review some commentaries on this past week's Torah portion. But within the context of the title about what Israel is going through, 1,200 rockets were shot at Israel, and what we could take from the parsha. So let's say a bracha together. Please answer Amen, or say your own bracha. If you have your own coffee, you do not say Amen on your own blessing that you make. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol niyeh bidvaro. So there you go. I hope you answered Amen. I think you did. I think I could feel it all the way here. So today I have 3 chumashim. See? 3 chumashim. There's so many amazing different commentaries on the Torah that it's, you could sit the entire week 24/7 and not make it through all the wonderful, amazing, insightful, inspiring, deep, brilliant commentaries on the portion of each week. So the question that was asked is 1,200 approximately, I think actually a little bit more, of rockets were shot at Israel in the last week. I talk a little bit from experience, and this is not meant, or at least its main objective is not meant as a criticism, but more as an alert or an awakening. I have spoken to Jews here in Coral Springs, and I will challenge many of my good friends here listening to this class that many of you do not even know that this has been going on in Israel for the last week, that 1,200 rockets were indiscriminately shot at Israel from the Gaza Strip. If I'm correct with that statement, how about you are bold enough to admit that my statement is correct? If you have not heard about the rockets in Israel, give us a thumbs up over here to confirm my suspicion. I say this not because I'm trying to put you on the spot. I say this because sadly, the reason why most of you probably do not know what's going on in Israel in the last week is because you have barely seen this in Western media. If you are one who follows Israeli media regularly, you know about this. If you do not follow Israeli media, you just follow sort of general Western media across the sort of the political, conservative, liberal, different approaches and leanings of the different media, you've probably almost not seen any coverage of what's going on in Israel, while Israelis have to rush at 3 o'clock in the morning, their babies, their children, into the miklatim, into shelters, into whether it's general shelters or the newer homes, which many of them are built with in-home shelters. Probably you don't know it. The reason you don't know it is because, sadly, tragically, that only when terrorists' lives are being killed en masse does it start to make the media, the Western media, as it goes through the usual, most likely blame of Israel, at least if not overtly, more subtly, the languages of cycle of violence and just highlighting half a story of how Israel, what Israel and how cruel Israel is, etc., etc. And the usual pressures on Israel to stop defending itself. You will see pictures, and if you'll see videos of Israeli kids running off bus stops and running to a shelter, whereas Israel, who eliminated 7 or 8, I think 7 of the leadership of the terror group, the jihad terror group, it's like amazing that you could see a video, which I have seen, where a building is being destroyed, and within the same video, just nearby, you see kids playing soccer. Meaning that Israel is so careful to avoid collateral damage, civilian casualty, that during this period of time, you do not see Palestinians en masse running into shelters because they know there's no danger to them. Israel is very specific in who it targets. Whereas the rockets shot to Israel indiscriminately to civilian populations causes that nobody feels safe to walk the streets during this, when the alarms go off and everybody has to run into hiding. Now, fortunately, the Iron Dome, the amazing technological capability of the Israeli army, the Tzahal, which it has, and is Israel's security, which it has created the Iron Dome, what's called in Hebrew the Kippat Barzel, has had tremendous success. It has had 95% success rate, which I will say, first and foremost, of course, protects our brothers and sisters in Israel. But I would even say that it protects and saves many lives on the Palestinian side, on the Arab side. As thank God for that. Because I do also want to digress for a moment, and this is before we're getting to the Parsha, but I'm sharing my thoughts over here because it's important. It's important to share so that some of the listeners here can get a different perspective than what you usually hear on Western media, which in my opinion, and this is a harsh statement, in my opinion, Western media, much, not all, but much of Western media has blood on their hands by how they cover the conflict between Israel and its enemies and the justification that they give and the negative and sometimes even hateful slant towards Israel causes that they are that they have blood on their hands. They have blood on their hands. The reason why I believe that, but having said that, I want to believe that many Palestinians in Gaza, in the Gaza Strip, are not evil, do not want this killing. There are those in the leadership of the terror groups that this is how they benefit, this is how they maintain power, this is how they receive millions and millions of dollars from various organizations, countries. I'm uncomfortable labeling all those in the Gaza Strip as enemies of Israel. Now, I want to qualify that, which is that my expertise is barely in Torah, because I have so much more that I could and should learn. When it comes to politics, when it comes to Israel, when it comes to statistics of the Arab population, the Palestinian population, my opinion is as good as yours. I say this purely as a civilian, as a citizen, as an observer, and you could, for the sake of honesty and sort of truth, what I am saying is not as we would say in Hebrew or in Yiddish, it's not Torah Sinai, it's not Torah from Sinai. This is my speculation as an individual, and it's speculative somewhat. Meaning, I don't like when Arabs are labeled or Muslims are labeled as bad people. I truly believe that's not true. First of all, I believe every person is born, good, and deep down, everybody has goodness within them. I don't believe that all those who are in Gaza or in Syria or in Lebanon, hate Jews. I don't believe that. Now, again, I have never done a survey. I've never done a statistic. I don't believe that at all. I believe there's plenty of good people who don't want this to happen, and unfortunately are suffering the consequences of people that are making decisions that is not in their best interest. That's just my feel over here. That's just my belief. Again, I have not done surveys. I'm not an expert in this field. However, I do believe, again, just based on the information that I have read over the years, that the root of the problem, amongst other things, this is not the only problem. The root of the problem, one of the roots of the problem is how the children are educated from youth. It is tragic to see how they're educated with hate towards Israel, with hate towards Jews. It is besides the anti-Semitism that it creates, and the hate and lives that are lost on both sides. It's just such an unhealthy and an unholy way to raise children. So that's sort of a general introduction observation of what's going on. I will also, again, my speculation is that the Iron Dome, as I began to say, which Baruch Hashem, thank God, has intercepted and protected Israelis from 1,200 rockets, even though I think it's about 20% of the rockets land in Gaza, do not make it to Israel. If, God forbid, the Kippat Barzel, the Iron Dome, was not effective, and rockets were just raining down and getting through into Israel, the retaliation that Israel would have to take would be much harsher, which in return would cost much more innocent Arab lives. So the Kippat Barzel, the Iron Dome, which first and foremost, most importantly, by far, protects Israelis, it also is a benefit to, in more than one way, to to those shooting at Israel. So that's, again, by way of introduction. L'chaim. Now, what does this mean for us over here? The Baal Shem Tov says that everything that you see and hear is a lesson in our Avodat Hashem. So I want to just use this sort of as a segue, as our class on Sunday morning is not sort of a political discussion, although this is not a political discussion, this is real life. But nevertheless, our class is a class of Torah. So I want to share some words of Torah as it relates to our discussion. And here, first, I'm opening up this Chumash, which has also English translation. I like to use this Chumash. It's not such a known Chumash. It was published, I think, when was it published? Probably in about 15, 20 years ago. Let me see when this was published. This Chumash, it's called the Sinai Scholars Edition by Rabbi Miller. It's a really beautiful Chumash. It says here it was published in 2011. It's a nice little Chumash. It's a nice little Bible. And let's go to the parsha that we just read. And then maybe we'll connect it to the parsha that we're going to read. We'll see. We'll see where this goes. And let's relax. Let's study Torah. Let's do it. So here we have Parshat Bechukotai. Parshat Bechukotai is the last portion in Leviticus. Okay? And interestingly enough, there's the famous Shalah. The Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad Rebbe, came out with a statement once, and he said, you got to live with the times. Now, this was before the New York Times existed or Time magazine existed. What did the Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad Rebbe, mean when he said you got to live with the times? His brother, who was known as Rabbi Yehuda Leib, clarified and said the following. He said that living with the times means with the portion of the week, the Torah portion of the week. And what it means, you got to live with it, is you got to live with it. It's not just a little idea here and there. And not only that, the Shalah, I believe, the holy Shalah, the great commentary in Kabbalah, said that everything that happens during the week, the holidays, can be found in the Parsha, and even more so, the Rebbe always underscores that since Torah is eternal, you could find a message in the Torah for anything that occurs in any period in history. You could find it in the portion of that week. Now, in this week's portion, it's not difficult. Based on what Israel is going through, it is not difficult because twice in this week's portion, it says the following. In this week's portion, it says twice. I'm going to read first in Hebrew, the holy words of God. Imchukotai teilechu vet mitzvosai tishmoru vasitem otam venatati gishmechem beitam venatna haaretz yuvula ve'etz hasadeh yiten piryo. I want to go to the English. If you pursue my laws, or the study of my laws, in order to guard my commands and observe them, then I will give you rain at a convenient time. The land will yield its produce. And then, skipping a little bit further, it says the following, and v'yishaftem lavetach ba'artzachem, and you will live safely in your land. And it continues, I will grant peace in the land, and you will go to sleep with nothing frightening you. That verse could have been written, and is written because Torah is eternal today, as it was when the Torah was given over 3,330 something years ago. Imagine, I give peace in the land, and you will lie down, ve'ein macharid, and there's nothing that frightens you. And the Rashi brings, here I'm going to read the holy words of the famous commentary Rashi. Listen to this. Okay, let's open up. I bought the wrong Chumash. I bought Bamidbar, even though we're now in Vayikra, so my apologies. But I have another Chumash, like a backup Chumash. I really wanted to have the other Chumash here too. But okay, it is what it is. It's all meant to be, right? So that's the way it goes. So let's go over here. Parshas Bechukosai. Says Rashi. Listen to what Rashi says. I'm reading the Rashi over here. Why does he talk about peace? It says using the words of Rashi. Shema Tomru, perhaps you will say, Hare Michael, there's what to eat. Hare Mishta, there's what to drink. Im ein shalom, ein klum. If there isn't tranquility in the land, if there isn't peacefulness, in other words, there isn't tranquility in the land, there is nothing. Talmud lomar kol acha kol zos. That's why the verse says, "V'nasati shalom ba'aretz." I will provide peacefulness in the land. L'chaim. So, the Torah says twice in the portion that we read this week, "V'yeshaftem lavetach," you will live peacefully in the land. You will sit, you will have betach, you will have security, tranquility. Ve'ein macharid, you go to bed. Ve'ein macharid, there's nothing that frightens you. Now, how is it? How can we achieve? How can we achieve this? How can we achieve this end goal? How can we achieve this end goal that there should be peace in the land, peace upon the land, and there should be security? So the Torah tells us very clearly, Im bechukotai telechu, you will follow in my statutes, and you will fulfill the mitzvahs. Correct? So let me delve a little bit deeper into that. There is a concept in Torah. Concept is the wrong word. There's an approach in Torah that the soul and body work hand in hand. Spiritual and material work together. So when dealing with an enemy that's attacking us, there are both that need to be done. Just like when we had the COVID virus, you need to go through the natural physical modes of battle, try to make sure you have the best tanks, the best technology, the best soldiers, the best trained soldiers, etc. But you could have all that, and sadly, you can lose. You can be unsuccessful. You need to have the spiritual and holy that give strength and give blessing, that the material approach, the physical approach, is as successful as can be, as in everything in life. You go out, you work, you make a living, but you also give tzedakah, you give charity, you do mitzvahs, you pray, you daven, so that your work should be successful. So the Torah over here tells us that in order to live peacefully in the land, it gives us a list of things. And what is the first thing it says? Im bechukotai telechu. You will walk in my statutes. Now, what does that mean, walk in my statutes? Says Rashi, Shetiu amelim baTorah, that you should toil in Torah study. Toiling in Torah study is the first thing, even before the keeping of the mitzvahs, that the Torah mentions in order to achieve all these blessings of abundance, of the crop and rain, till peace in the land. In our own lives, tranquility in our own lives, whether it's the land of Israel or in our own lives. But the first thing the Torah mentions is these words, Shetihiyu imbechokotai telechu, says Rashi, Shetihiyu amelim baTorah, that you should toil in Torah study. Now, what does it mean to toil in Torah study? What does that mean, to toil in Torah study, which is the first thing listed? Again, as we try to create from here, since we are all one body, our brothers and sisters in Israel, we're part of one body. When one part of your body is sick, you might take an injection in a different part of your body because it's one body. What happens in one part benefits and affects positively the rest of the body. We are one body. We're one nation. What happens and the good that we take on, the Kippat Barzel, so to speak, the spiritual iron dome that we commit to, benefits our brothers and sisters wherever they might be. So what is this spiritual Kippat Barzel that we should take on? Various answers, but today we will focus on this first thing the Torah says. Shetiu amelim baTorah, you should toil in Torah. What does it mean to toil in Torah? I wanted to go down two answers over here. One answer, toiling in Torah, says the Klei Yoker, one of the great commentaries, says that it refers to setting aside a fixed time in Torah. Toiling in Torah means that not only do you periodically tune into Torah, but you set aside a fixed time that means that it's real. That means that it's not just a clickbait type of Torah. I see something interesting, I bump across something on the internet, YouTube, whatever. No, it's important to you. You know, there's in this week's Torah portion, unfortunately, it also talks about the curses. And as it lists the curses, it talks about one of the curses where God says, if you will go with me, bekeri, this is the words, bekeri, keri. And Rashi struggles a little bit. What does this word bekeri mean? And then one of the main explanations he explains is bekeri means belashon mikre. Mikre means, in Yiddish we call it zeitweilig, or in English we might call it occasionally. We happen to bump in. And as one of the commentaries explains and says, it means that when you have nothing else to do, then I tune in and I maybe do some Torah study. Other than that, I'm busy. How many times do I talk to people and I tell them that in today's world, where there's so much bombardment of what in Yiddish we call Narishkeiten, stupidities, or even if it's not stupidities, it's unhealthy because you're polluting your mind with negativity, and people are fixated in news, social media, sports, whatever it is. And then I tell them, you have to connect to holiness. You have to connect to Torah. The answer is, Rabbi, I'm too busy. I'm busy. I have one of my kids, sometimes when I ask him to do something, or I ask her to do something, I'm busy. I'm busy. What am I busy with? I'm busy. There's no such a thing. So the commentary explains, based on Rashi, he says, what does it mean that God says that I will punish you? As the Torah portion also deals, unfortunately, with the negatives and warnings from Hashem, he says, "Im telchu imi bekeri," says the verse. You'll go with me in keri. Keri, says Rashi, is from the word mikra. Occasionally. What does occasionally mean? Says this commentary, I think it's the Be'er Basadeh, explains Rashi, and he says, bekeri means I have time for God, for holiness, for Torah, when I'm finished with all my other stuff. And since, unfortunately, often we're not finished with all our other stuff, so you're too busy. You're too busy to tune in to something holy, to something meaningful, to Torah, which is vital. It's vital for our well-being, just even our simple mental well-being, never mind our spiritual well-being. So, or to put it this way, there's no such a thing that you're too busy for something that's truly important. God forbid your child is not well, needs to go to the doctor. I'm too busy. It doesn't exist. My child's well-being is the highest priority. There's no such a thing that I'm too busy. I'm too busy for holiness. I'm too busy for my Jewishness. I'm too busy for my neshama. I'm too busy for my soul. Who are you? Why are you making a living? What's your existence? So the Torah begins, one of the explanations, again, based on the Klei Yakar, is what does it mean, amelim batorah? Amelim batorah means I have a fixed time set aside for Torah, because that shows that's a toil, that's an effort. It's a real commitment. It's real to me. It's not just sort of clickbait, that there's something excites me and then I'll do it. No, I set aside a time. And he says that's why the Torah uses the expression, even my statutes you will go, because usually, especially then, to have a fixed time for Torah, you had to go to the synagogue and hook up with somebody else, listen to a class. Today, we have to go in a more mental state, meaning you have so much available learning on the internet, classes and texts and different podcasts and so on, that you just have to make a fixed time because it's real. There's another interpretation of what amelim batorah is, with another explanation. It's also a bit of a scholarly sort of explanation, so bear with me. And then I want to finish off with reading some points from an article, interesting article that I've seen. Only by Torah do we often use the expression amelim batorah, to toil. In a more simple but deeper level, amelim batorah means that you don't just learn something superficially. Oh, I got it, I understand, I move on. we're constantly, our brains are today programmed. It's very hard to zero in and focus and try to understand something deeper and deeper and deeper, because we're constantly enjoying the stimuli of a new subject, as we watch, whether it's movies, social media, articles, quick social notifications, and scrolling through this constant stimuli of new stuff. As a result, we've lost the ability of amelim, of toiling in something, in an idea, especially in Torah study. I want to highlight this with an explanation, that a beautiful explanation that the Rebbe gives on a Talmudic statement. The Talmud says like this. I'll say it in Hebrew, then translate. Mevatlin Talmud Torah mipnei Mikra Megillah. We are mevatel. We interrupt learning of Torah in order to go ahead and read the Megillah, or hear the Megillah on Purim, the story of Esther, the story of Purim, of Haman, Achashverosh, right? Of Haman. So the Talmud tells us the law that if someone is sitting and learning Torah, and usually you are not allowed to interrupt your study of Torah, but you go ahead, says the Talmud, that the law is established that you interrupt your Torah learning to go and fulfill the rabbinical mitzvah of listening to the reading of the Megillah. So commentaries ask, isn't the reading of the Megillah also a mitzvah of Torah? It's also Torah. It's part of Torah. It's part of the 24 books. It's part of the scriptures. Why would we have to be told? And why do we use the term that you are mevatel, you interrupt Torah learning in order to hear the Megillah? Various answers are given, but listen to this brilliant answer of the Rebbe, and it's a beautiful answer. The Rebbe says the following. In learning Torah, in anything that you learn, but especially in Torah learning, we have different levels in our brain of how we study. The deeper you're delving, the more focused, the more you're concentrating, the more you're delving deeper and using more of your brain to learn Torah, the more parts of you, of course, are engaged in that Torah study, as opposed to learning something more superficially. When you're learning something superficially, there's parts of your brain and your being that are right now interrupted from Torah study, because they're not engaged in that process. So reading Megillah is basically, especially when you read it in the synagogue, is a fairly superficial, in terms of intellectual exercise, intellectual engagement, is a pretty superficial engagement, connection of your reading, as opposed to sitting and studying something in great depth. Says the Rebbe, that's what the Talmud is teaching us, that if you're learning something properly, which means you're fully engaged, you interrupt parts of your engagement in order to fulfill the mitzvah Megillah, which is important enough to interrupt from your Torah study, even though that itself is also Torah study. But part of you is being interrupted from Torah study. I hope the point is clear. If it's not clear, you can text me and I'll try to make it a little clearer. What's the point over here? This is another explanation of what it means, Shetiu Amelim Batorah. What the Torah is telling us, that in order for you to have blessings, the blessings that I'm talking about, and for you to be peaceful, you have to be fully engaged, not just superficially engaged. I think this is such an important lesson for us, for all of us, maybe even to an extra degree to American Jewry, which often, there's different levels, of course, regarding this. There's different levels within ourselves, depending on the day, depending on our dedication, commitment. But there is, to many, a very superficial engagement in who we are in terms of our Jewish connection, our Torah learning connection. Again, this can be divided into many levels, both within ourselves and to our brothers and sisters or brethren around us. But there's no question that American Jewry, a big part of American Jewry, its Jewish interaction, level, knowledge, education, especially on a regular basis, is quite superficial. So here, as we're trying to create a spiritual kippat barzel, a spiritual iron dome, which does not allow for any negativity, if anything threatening to penetrate, it's not enough to have just a superficial involvement. We want to create something that has no holes, that is wholesome, that's complete. So we have to have a wholesome, complete, full, in-depth, not leave any part of ourselves out of that holy connection of our beautiful tradition, Torah, and so on. We want to create a full protection. You know, they said the Iron Dome, in their statistics analysis of this last week, had 95% success. Wonderful. But 5% failure. And that 5% failure caused a 75-year-old woman, I forgot her name right now, it was published, to be killed. That's unacceptable. That's a tremendous tragedy. We want our full spiritual involvement so that we help assist, that there should be 100% success. And even more so, I want to say this again, even more so, and I want to stress, while we have to be careful between being loving and yet being fully protective, in full protection of our people, we need to go out in full protection, whatever it takes to protect the innocent. Without any tolerance, no society would accept and allow for missiles to be indiscriminately shot at their population. And yet Israel is expected to do so. Sadly, I just want to conclude with one or 2 points from an article written by Rabbi Uri Vigler, a colleague. Very simple, beautiful article. And he is proposing the spiritual response. He gives seven points. I'll mention maybe several. So he says the following. He says, a Jew is a Jew. That's point number one that he makes. Our enemies do not differentiate between religious and secular. I will take it even a step further, between whether you're right wing, left wing, what your politics are. They want to murder us all equally. To counter this, we need to target every one of us with love, religious or not. Good to battle evil. Number two, unshakable commitment. Our enemies will never give up. That's clear. No matter how many times Israel triumphs, their hateful and violent attempts will continue unabated. How do we counter this? By standing firm in our steadfast commitment to one another. No matter what life throws at us, we can't give up on loving and supporting our Jewish brothers. Number three, I will actually go to number four. Children as weapons. The terrorists hide behind their children because they know that the IDF will do anything to avoid harming innocent children and civilians, which leads to a complicated halachic discussion. The Tzahal, the Israeli Defense Force, published a video this past week where one of the pilots who was on a mission to hit one of the targets, you hear the pilot being told, or he's telling his operator, abort, mission aborted, because you could see a child in the area, and they abort the mission because Israel has perfected its ability to do as little collateral damage or innocent lives as much as possible. And there's a discussion of how far do you go with that, which is a subject onto its own. Perhaps one class we will address that. However, children as weapons. The terrorists hide behind their children because they know that the IDF will do anything to avoid harming innocent children and civilians. We too, talk about the negative, need to focus on our most powerful weapon, our children. Teach them Torah, bring them to the synagogue, make sure Shabbat is done in a way that is enjoyable for them. Give them positive associations with Judaism, and they will pass it along to the next generation. In other words, learn from the enemy how important children are in the positive sense. I want to conclude with addressing my question. Is Israel a drag onto the nations, onto the United States? The reverse cannot be greater emphasized. The truth is that Israel is the testing ground for society, for humanity, of good over evil. Not to say that Israel never makes mistakes. Israel is the testing ground for the most sophisticated development of warfare in the most humane way. The West gains and learns far more from Israel than it has to endure from what some might call the headache of Israel, whether it's intelligence. I heard this on Friday. I don't know if it's so accurate. I don't know. That Israel customizes its missiles based on the target. In other words, if it's a bigger window, smaller window, apartment, so that it could pinpoint more effectively in hitting its target, and also to avoid the collateral damage of those around, it customizes those missiles. This is what I heard, whether it's accurate or not, but the general approach is definitely true. So may God bless humanity, the world, to clearly demonstrate its support for what's right, for what's true, and this will benefit both sides. When you clearly stand and allow and support good, you eradicate evil, and that benefits all on both sides of the conflict over here. So may Hashem protect us. May Hashem bring true peace. May the fulfillment of the promise through the prophets with the coming of Mashiach, when there will be true, lasting peace onto this world, be fulfilled immediately. And as I always conclude, thank you for listening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share words of Torah. It means a lot to me. I get a lot of feedback. Of course, if you have questions or you have specific topics you would like to cover, that I should cover and share, please give me your thoughts on that. Have a wonderful, fantastic, blessed week.